Hello, watchers and listeners in Internetville. We're here with another episode of the Author Interview Plunge. Today's guest is Gene Poschman, the author of the Jonas Watcher books, The Case of the Running Bag, The Case of the Bourbon Street Hustler, The Case of the Jade Dragon, The Case of the Dead Detective, and others soon to follow. And all with a nod to Earl Stanley Gardner, title-wise, I'm sure. Gene writes that he's always been an avid watcher of film noir, mysteries, and other detective fiction, as well as science fiction and fantasy, and that he's an avid reader. Everybody, please welcome Gene Poschman.
Okay. Big crowd yell, applause light goes off. Hi.
Gene, thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to leap right into the questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Joseph.
Okay. First question. Who's Jonas Watcher and why is he letting you document his cases?
I guess the best way to say that is that Jonas Watcher just kind of suddenly appeared one day while I was reading a collection of short stories by Dashiell Hammett called The Continental Op. It's not one of his more famous works, but it's an excellent collection of short stories about how private investigators actually worked during the time of the 1930s. It was during one of those short stories that he had made reference to an incident in the story. And for some reason, my mind picked it up. And as I focused on that incident, the name Jonas Watcher just hit me. It was like, there it was. It's just one of those things where you suddenly go, oh, I got to write this down. This is good. And from there, he built. I initially started just to write the one story, but in the midst of writing the one story, I ended up with 4 more in my head. And I thought, well, I can't let this go. I've got to continue. And I have somewhere an image where I've imposed while I'm busily working the shadow of somebody leaning over me, which the muse of Jonas Watcher, telling me the stories.
Excellent. Now, you told me previously that your first writing effort was a script for Have Gun Will Travel. And all the boomers in the audience are going, oh yeah, Paladin, yeah, oh yeah. So could you tell us how your odyssey from Paladin and the Hotel Carlton to Jonas Watcher and noir thrillers, what was that travel that you went through to come to that?
It ironically wasn't quite as far as it would seem. I had always been a big Paladin fan. I have watched and seen multiple times the entire series. Richard Boone is an excellent director. He's a good actor. And a lot of the storylines he had created. And it was probably really the first really strong, mature Western that came to the television screen. And it doesn't hurt that it's in black and white. And at the same time, I'm, of course, a big fan of the Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett stories that have been made into these marvelous film noir films with such actors as Humphrey Bogart and who was it I was just trying to think of? Dick Powell, and others that played these characters. And staying in San Francisco helped because, well, Paladin's in the Hotel Carlton in San Francisco. So that was easy to do. And I'm no good at Westerns. I tried. And I did actually write a short story that was a Western. The people that I sent it to weren't terribly thrilled with what I had done. So I couldn't, it just, for me, I knew I couldn't do it. But it also then occurred to me that I could take the concept of the character Paladin, take him out of the Hotel Carlton, and keep him in San Francisco and move him into the 1930s. And then I would develop my character from there. And while they're both in San Francisco, while they're both probably roughly about the same age, and they both have military backgrounds, they're two very different people, because in the first book, Jonas Watcher is actually hungover as he starts. And he has a battle with alcohol. I don't hang on to it strongly because I don't want it to distract from the stories and the other characters, but I wanted people to know what he was coming from. And in doing that, I gave him some foibles, things that people could identify with. And I didn't want to create a superhero, but I did want to create a man that was capable of doing things. And in the start of it, it's kind of like, you know, how is this guy going to get there? And then as you learn more about him, you discover, oh, wait a minute, he's got skills. And as the story grows, you learn about these skills. And even in the first book, I don't cover them all. Anyway, actually, in all 4 books, I haven't covered everything he's capable of.
Amazing. You told me that you're an avid reader, and that the fact that you are now an avid reader would probably surprise a number of your teachers. You said earlier, I would have been a better reader earlier if Dick and Jane were detectives, or at least a wizard and a witch. Were you a difficult student?
No, I was a scared student. I was scared of authority. If somebody had authority, man, I figured I was in deep yogurt, because for whatever reason, I stepped into it all the time, and not deliberately. It was truly from, I guess to say, from a sense of innocence and ignorance. And ironically, I didn't actually do well reading until my brother, who was older than I by 5 years, gave me the book Bambi. Yeah, my introduction to Bambi was not the Disney Bambi. My introduction to Bambi was the book. And trust me, there's a big difference, because it's a whole, I don't know if you're familiar with the actual book itself, but it's considerably darker than Little Thumper bumping his foot on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as far as being a kid and a student, I walked the line. But reading was just boring. You know, I should also explain, I grew up on a farm, okay, in Southern California, and Dick and Jane weren't new. You know, everything they talked about, I'm kind of going, I know this stuff. Why am I reading this? I want something else. And the first time they introduced a book that actually had different sections, like, well, among it, they had fantasy. There was a fantasy section. And I shot right to the fantasy section and read through that first.
Very good. Your novels tend to be short. As a matter of fact, they are what I would call a good afternoon read. So how short is short, and why do you prefer to pen short novels?
Actually, you said it. It's a good afternoon read. I'm not a really good long book reader. Although I have. I will buy books if the description and the author appeal to me, and it's 400 or 500 pages, I'll buy it, and I will read it over a long period of time, and I'll probably enjoy it a great deal. But I commuted a lot, and taking BART in San Francisco, actually. And on the BART train, you have all these people reading, you know, and some of them have these like big, huge books. And it looks uncomfortable because, let's face it, the BART train's not the most comfortable place to sit and read. And when I started writing, it wasn't, I didn't intentionally start out to make my books short, but I had a story to tell. I worked it out. And I didn't see the necessity of adding on a lot of stuff that took away from the characters or took away from the plot and the events taking place. I didn't see a need for a, 100-page drifting description of what San Francisco looks like, because everybody in their head has a picture of San Francisco. And if I can give them the basic elements that are there, they can see it.
Very good.
And that's what I want to do. I want to use people's imagination, so I feed them the basics and the pieces that need to make it interesting, and let their imaginations take over. And I'll explain more about that, because there's an element that I want to share that,
Okay.
You'll understand when you ask some of the additional questions.
Okay. You told me you enjoy a good port. Is Jonas Watcher a port drinker, or does he prefer another beverage?
Jonas Watcher doesn't drink. He's an alcoholic. He does enjoy a good port, and because there are elements of a port that you can enjoy without drinking, particularly if it's a really good port. You can sit there and enjoy the aroma. And too often I know people who, as I said, when I have a good port, I sit with it for a while and I enjoy the aroma, and I really do just sip it. Mm-hmm. And Jonas doesn't sip, but he does enjoy the aroma. And there are times when I think about how I might want to deal with when he might slip a bit, as far as the character is concerned. And within the stories, there are probably places I can do that. I haven't done it yet, but it's coming.
Spoiler. Okay, very good. What is your biggest pet peeve? Your pet peeve, not Jonas's, yours.
The traditional publishing market.
Okay, come on, tell me more.
All right. As a young man, I dealt with it unsuccessfully. And I realized that I read a lot of science fiction, and a couple of the writers that I read were Isaac Asimov and, just some others. And one of the things that was very clear to me, that both of these people were where publishing took place. And the more I thought about it, the more I became aware of, within that industry, it isn't a matter of what you can do or how much you know or even how well you write, but you really do have to know somebody. You have to know somebody to get past that first reader, because if you don't ever make it past that first reader, and it's nothing against first readers, because I recognize that they get a lot of stuff. I mean, let's face it, everybody out there thinks they can write a book. And I think to some degree or another, everybody out there could write a book if they figure out which one it is. But there's a lot more to it than, just putting paper and pen together and putting down words one after the other. There's a lot involved. I probably do more writing when I'm not writing than when I'm physically writing. I will sit and think and contemplate. I will play with characters in my head. And I'm sure I'm not telling you something you don't already know. And I will do that for hours at end before I even put a word on the paper. And from my standpoint, those early days, I couldn't get past I even tried, a friend suggested an editor. And so I had written a book, and I passed it on to him, and I paid for him to edit it. And I went back and did some stuff and paid some more for him to edit it. And he shopped it around for me, and it didn't go anywhere. And it was one of those things. I kept feeling like I was running into a roadblock. And even when I went to classes with, writers and other things, it was still a case of, if you don't have a champion, you don't have a lot of chance getting through. Sometimes you can do it through a magazine. Sometimes you can find somebody that actually does read your thing. But to me, it's a pet peeve, and it's frustrating as hell.
Understood. You mentioned going to classes. You mentioned having an editor. What did you find most useful in learning to write? And what did you find least useful or most destructive in learning to write?
The most useful thing I got in learning to write was learning English. I mean, the foundations of English. Understand what a noun is, understand what a verb is, understand how a sentence is structured, understanding all of the grammar elements that are required to write, and being infinitely comfortable with them so that I could break every rule in the book because I knew how. I knew that I could have a one-word sentence, and by placing it properly, I didn't need a noun, I didn't need a verb, I didn't need any of the other stuff. I just put in that one word, and that could be worth volumes. So you've got to know English grammar. You have to understand it. I recognize for particularly kids in school and stuff, it's like, oh my God, diagram a sentence. Yeah, diagram a sentence, understand how all of that works, because then when you sit down, particularly in fiction, to create something, a character, a scene, an event, any of those things, if you fully understand the structure of the language, you can make it work for you. You can stay with what you realize is this is the proper way to do it. There are things that you must follow. You don't break these rules, but there are other rules that you can break, and you learn when and how to do that. As for the most destructive thing, probably was a English teacher in junior college who was more angry at the published establishment than I was. And it was a case of, if it hadn't been for the students in the class would have been an absolute disaster, because what was coming from the teacher was just crap.
Understood.
It actually stopped me from doing anything for about 2 years.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's how bad it was.
Okay, getting back to Jonas Watcher for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Those are noirs, but they're crime stories, essentially. So because I don't write crime stories, but I love to read them, there's got to be a logic to the story to solve a crime. And that makes me wonder, does someone who writes noirs, crime thrillers, crime stories, do you write by logic, or does it come to you? Does it like, poof, there it is? You mentioned earlier reading the Dashiell Hammett thing, and all of a sudden there was Jonas right there. Yeah. So, is there a combination? How does that work?
Well, it starts out, poof. I mean, it's a terrible way to put it, but it does. It starts out where there's a thought. And it may not even be a crime. It's just an event, something that just strikes you. And something else will come to you, and then you wonder, what if? And once I start working on what if, then it starts to flow. But don't think of it as all inspiration or intuition, because I will write initially when I sit down to write, when I'm at the keyboard and I'm pounding away and I'm writing, all I'm doing is telling the story. It doesn't have anything. Truth of the matter is, when I'm done, it isn't worth reading, because then I'll set it aside maybe for a couple hours, maybe for a couple of minutes, or maybe even a couple days. It depends. And then I will sit down, and that's when the logic comes in. That's where I start to formulate and format how it should look and how it should be. And at the same time, letting intuition jump in periodically as I'm doing it. There's a lot of times when I will rush through getting a story told because I know the story. I got to get it down on paper, because once I have it down on paper, then I can mold it into the structure that I want it to be. I can give it the face and the shape, and it then starts to become exciting. It starts to become sexy. It starts to become silly. All of those things start to come into it. And as I'm going, I can then say, oh, this is where I want a tense scene. This is where I want it to be just a little bit silly. And although I haven't done a lot of romantic scenes in my books, that's been developing. The first book had particularly nothing. Some suggestion, but nothing of any real substance. The second book, I actually had a romantic involvement. And I'm very pleased with how I handled it and how it came out. I don't know if everybody who reads it will see it that way, but I liked it. And generally, I get good feedback from people that they also like it. They agreed with how I handled it.
Excellent.
And it satisfied not only the logic of things, it fed the emotional part of people also.
Well, that's wonderful. You're presaging all of my questions here.
Okay.
What is something memorable you've heard from your readers and fans, other than, we really liked the way you did that romance scene? That was very good.
I have had several dozen people tell me after reading the second book that they want the treehouse. Boy,
Okay.
that's rotten, isn't it?
That is. So there's a treehouse in the second book.
There's a treehouse in the second book, and
spoilers.
Yeah. Well, not really, because it's just there, but it's an aspect of, particularly within the second book, there were a number of things that I did. One, I took him out of San Francisco and I take him to New Orleans. That happens at the very beginning. No spoiler here. And there's the love interest there. No spoil there either, but it's there. But the collection of characters that I created, I got some incredible feedback. People just, I had one lady who says, is he coming back to New Orleans? I want to know more about. And the characters and the people involved there. And I had a number of people who, after the third book, wanted to know how I was going to continue, or was I going to continue with the love interest. And there's a lot of people that want to know about another character and what's going on with her. She's a continuing character in the book. And without giving any spoilers, if you will, in the second book, there is an event that I think comes right out of the blue for a lot of people. And it's one of those things where as a writer, when you do it and it works, you're really good, because what you've done is you've actually brought through a twist that people didn't see coming. And then when they think about it, I had one lady tell me she had to go back and read the first book. And she said, of course. and let me know that, so those are the things that are really very satisfying. When you've created something and people want more of something that you've done, they actually will tell you, I want to see more of this. And,
excellent.
And when I've spent time doing it and I like it, then, that also works into it, because I go, oh, okay, I can do this.
And that's to the next question. What do you love most about the writing process?
Rewriting.
Rewriting.
I love rewriting.
Oh, God.
But you see, the story's now told. There it is. Okay. But now I get to give depth. I get to give Jonas depth. I get to give the events that are going on depth. I even get to see more of what I'm doing with my story as I work the rewrite. I'm one of the few people that actually adds when I rewrite. I don't take away, because the bones of the story are the first thing that I've written. I haven't gone and written 300 or 400 pages of stuff that has to be gone back and things have to be taken out. I have to put things in. And when once I have the story and I can take a look at a scene and I can go, how do I really want that to show? What kind of detail do I want here? What do I want people to take away from this? And so I will build on that. And it probably wasn't so much in the first book, because the first book was sort of there. I had all of the stuff that I wanted. And while I did some rewriting and I had an editor work with me on it, and he helped me get through some things. I will tell you, this is actually an editor who worked for free. He was so enthralled with the story that he was willing to work for free to help me with what I was doing with it. And he still works with me. So he's a big fan, and I have a feeling for an editor that's probably a problem when you're a big fan of the guy you're working with, because you're spending probably more time than you should, because you should be just getting through it. But then he's going, hey, well, what if we? And so yeah, that's
excellent. Very good. You have these characters, San Francisco, New Orleans, 1930s. What techniques do you use to describe the characters in your books?
I don't do a lot of in-depth. I mean, I don't go into colors of eyes and shapes of noses and stuff like that. I give general descriptions, and I will use terms from the period that describe them. And it's like I have yet to use it, but I had thought that somewhere along the line I should explain that Jonas Watcher has chiseled features, but I haven't yet. My wife accuses me of not describing him really, really well, because then any actor could play him. But he has a general description. I keep them loose, but I try and provide elements that will make you interested in them, and that will give you a feel. He has a receptionist that he works with, and I have described her such that if you thought of Della Street or some other women of that time, because that's where some of it comes from, you'd be there.
Okay.
And I try to do that so that, and actually I'll take a half step. When I made the comment about the tree house, I described this tree house where a man lives. And it's in the bayou in Louisiana. And I don't give a huge amount of detail, but I give enough so that you can see what it looks like. And everybody has gotten a slightly different view of it. And they go, God, but I love to live in that tree house. And, but I don't think an artist could sit down for my description and create it without reaching into themselves and coming up with what it would look like.
Very good. What character in your books are you least likely to get along with?
Authoritarian assholes. And I do have them in the books. And you will recognize them. I don't treat them as such, but based upon what they do and how they behave, you'll recognize them. Okay. Because I don't like them.
All right. What would Jonas Watcher have to say about you?
He would probably say the one thing about me that my brother said, that I'm probably one of the gentlest people he's ever known.
A hard-boiled detective saying that okay, all right, we'll go with that. Tell us about your current project. I believe it's called Milady's Gentleman.
That's correct. Now, it's a new series, and Jonas Watcher isn't going away, by the way, because I am taking him back to New Orleans in the Bayou. And that's in place, and I'm working on it. It's actually very well maybe the longest Jonas Watcher story, because there's a lot of richness from New Orleans history that's going to play into this. For people who have read books who are watching this, I will share some stuff. There won't be spoilers, but you're going to find out about real zombies. You're going to find out about how voodoo works and what voodoo really is. You're going to find out about New Orleans history and romance of vampires and what they call rougarou, which is a type of werewolf. And so I'm taking a little bit of mythology, but I'm not leaping into that it exists. I'm simply explaining why it's there.
And how long do we have to wait for this book?
It'll probably come out in the summer.
Okay. But let's get back to...
Now,
that wasn't Milady's Gentleman, though.
No, that was not Milady's.
The werewolf and the vampire.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's impressive.
Milady's Gentleman is actually a little bit different for me in that my lead characters are two women, Agatha Wingate and Sarah Wingate. Agatha Wingate is a woman who has grown up basically at the same period that Victoria did. In fact, Agatha Wingate has been a childhood friend of Victoria.
Victoria?
Queen.
Queen, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, of the Queen. Her father is Lord Wingate. They are England aristocracy. And it starts out basically a series of short books that cover initially Agatha's growing up time, or at least one book does, and her relationship and friendship with Victoria, and will go through, probably up through when Victoria passes, And Victoria asks Agatha to be her personal spy. And her job is to deal with other countries, other elements, and keep Victoria apprised of what's really going on in the world, because she doesn't really trust her advisors.
Okay.
And Agatha is a person that does it. Sarah Wingate is Agatha's niece, and she'll actually not show up until later in the series, because there will actually be 2 series with the same series title, The Ladies' Gentleman. And Sarah will pick up and follow through up until World War I. And she is also a spy. And the title of the series comes from when Agatha basically gets out on her own. She has inherited money. She doesn't currently have title, though she will become Dame Agatha in time. But she has outrageously chosen to have a gentleman's gentleman instead of a lady's maid. And he's a spy too.
Okay. All right. Okay. I've kept you here for a while. We have one more question to go.
Okay.
Here it is. What question do you wish that somebody would ask about you or your book, but nobody has?
Wow, there have been so many questions. What has somebody not asked me? You know, I think basically what people have not asked me is why I chose to self-publish. And the reason being that I'm as old as dirt. And the truth is, I don't have a huge amount of time on earth left. I figure I've got, if I'm lucky, I've got maybe 20, 30 years. For my age, I'm in relatively good health. And I decided that I no longer was going to waste time with the traditional publishing establishment. Clearly, they're not interested in me, and it's not an easy choice to make, and it's not an easy way to get yourself known. But what it does allow me to do is to write books, to get them edited, to get book covers, to go through that whole process, which, by the way, I enjoy. I love looking at book covers. I love, looking at format structure and all of that stuff. And I have a couple of people who are editors who have chosen to aid and abet me in my process. And so I can get my books out there. I know how to do it. I'm still working on how to market. That's the challenge. That's the big challenge. What can I do that will get me in front of the most eyes? And if you take a look at Amazon, you'll discover on Kindle, I don't sell my books for more than 99 cents, and I don't intend to. Because at this point in my life, I don't require it as an income, although it would be nice to have the extra money. But I want people to actually get out there and read the books. So my first one's free. People can pick it up and read it, The Case of the Running Bag. And the others are 99 cents. And I figured that if I provide 99 cents worth of enjoyment to somebody who's reading, then I've accomplished what I set out to do.
Excellent. Very, very good. Mr. Gene Poschman, the author of the Jonas Watcher books, and soon the Milady's Gentleman books. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and make yourself available to our audience. I'm looking forward to the next Jonas Watcher with the vampires and all that kind of stuff in the werewolf. But that's me. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much, sir. Best of luck with you in your books, in your writing. It sounds like you have quite a few in the line, and in the self-publishing. I wish you the best. Let's hope we can get some attention coming your way.
I would appreciate it. Thank you, Joseph, for spending the time with me.
My pleasure. Have a good evening, sir.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.